the 2019 Amazon original superhero series, 8 episodes in total, and it is quite a ride. Not perfect, but definitely the best superhero series I've seen in a very long time. The show was originally based off a comic book series of the same name from Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson that originally delved into what happens when superheroes aren't entirely accountable for their actions, and the humans who have to deal with said consequences, both intimately, professionally, and personally. The whole underground world of The Boys and the behind the scenes of Vote America is absolutely gleefully horrible in the best way possible. While the show is incredibly graphic in so many different ways, the satirical aspects never make the show unbelievable or treat the characters as a joke, even if they might be considered one amongst their peers. Each episode is absolutely brilliant, and each one has at least one or two WTF moments overall. It takes us through the lives of our main protagonist, Huey, played by the anxiously brilliant Jack Quaid, and Erin Moriarty playing Annie January, aka latest Vote 7 recruit Starlight. Once introduced to the world, which takes about an episode or two, things take an immediate turn for the worst for both characters, and the rest of the show is more often than not a slow burn, except for one or two truly stunning moments that would rival most full seasons of the latest CW DC Comics shows. What makes me truly worried going into this series is we've seen the meta-commentary superhero before, such as in these two, obviously. It's been tried a few times, and often gets to a certain point where the premise runs thin, or at least you get most of the gags, the most absurd points from being a superhero, if it was real, as a premise. Even with the upcoming HBO Watchmen series, it's almost starting to feel tired at the very least. While The Boys was originally created about a decade and a half ago, it really doesn't stray too far from any gruesome detail. Watchmen is set to be released in October of this year, and while you could say the original comic book series took inspiration from Alan Moore's original work, all adaptations of Watchmen so far have been mediocre at best and tonally distant from the original graphic novel at worst. The Boys presents a more modern world which helps ground their story, characters, and limitations, while HBO appears to be going in a more modern take. However, there won't be any social media or smartphones or internet, and I don't know how that's going to work. On top of all of this, I feel Amazon gave a lot of creative liberties to Eric Kripke, Seth Rogen, and Evan Goldberg. Even reading the most recent AMA from Kripke, there are a lot of things that they did in the show, and the things that they didn't allow, even I'm shocked that they didn't go that far. I think HBO can only do so much with what they have, and honestly, I don't trust Damon Lindelof any further than I can throw him. What I'm saying is that The Boys succeeds where many have failed. It could be the fact that The Boys has a finite destination. It was only a little over 70 issues in total in its original run. It knows its characters well and has a good award-nominated palette and story to play with. The worst I can say about it is that sometimes the performances feel a little bit phoned in from the secondary characters, some of the dialogue feels a little bit too expository, and there's this weird filter over the entire series that almost makes it look like it's still stuck in Zack Snyder land. It's a little bit too yellow and brownish in some places, a little bit too teal in other places, but overall it maintains a consistent tone that I can kind of let it get away with. On the other hand, some might say The Boys goes too far, and maybe there's a line people aren't willing to cross in their stories about superheroes, because what is the difference between a superhero and a supervillain when even the heroes aren't as pure as we thought? I honestly suggest trying out at least the first 2 episodes, and that's at least a 2-hour commitment, and if you feel as though the show is gratuitous or truly not your thing, it's totally fine. Giving up on a show that you really just can't take right now is not a weakness at all and doesn't mean that you can't handle it down the track. But those who will stick around for the full 8 episodes will truly have a wild and fun time. Overall, while watching The Boys, I experienced a sense of relief and catharsis with most episodes, and while the series itself is spawned from its own comic book series, with nerd comedy geniuses and executive producers Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, and Dan Trachtenberg at the helm, you have very little to worry about. The show has a lot to say about fandom, hero worship, superheroes, and where we place our faith and hope even when it is at the foot of these behemoth companies. I really loved the meta-commentary that they had in the show about superheroes and how they are essentially run like a conglomerate, like, say, Disney or Marvel. We forget that on a daily basis that our love and admiration we put into these fictional characters rather than in our friends or family or our own creative endeavors is ultimately to make money. That is it at the end of the day. When a lot of people were, saying, oh, it's great that, it's so good Endgame, it beat Avatar, it's crazy, box office, blah, blah, blah. I am still one of those people who are going to be cynical assholes being like, well, at the end of the day, these companies just want money, and we kind of gave them exactly what they wanted. Superheroes and these companies may just be symbols to some people, and maybe it's something that we should look up to in modern culture, but they're no more real than Jesus was to the people of Nazareth. And this is something that more often than not, both Marvel and DC aren't really willing to talk about in their series, even when they get the most creative, the most meta, the most interesting they possibly can get, even with their properties such as Deadpool or Guardians of the Galaxy, or even Thor Ragnarok. The Boys, at the end of the day, is, while not the most creative series, it definitely has a lot, and I cannot wait for season 2 afterwards. It took about 8 hours to binge in total, and I honestly give this 4 laser babies out of 5.